What's up, YouTube fans? Today we're going to do a comparison of the Takara Tomy MPG Ginrai with the Keats Fantasy Club Raijin and the Fans Hobby Power Baser. All versions of a masterpiece scale Ginrai. Now we just reviewed this guy recently, and obviously you can see huge difference in the size. And there's a lot of debate in the community. I got a lot of comments about it's the right size, it's not the right size, it's too small, it's just right. I don't really care about that. What I'm really going to do here is compare these products, which are all relatively meant to be in the masterpiece scale, and competing with each other. So it's worth it, and I know people want to see this video. With that being said, I'm approaching this video as a comparison of the core robot modes. And these two are actually sold as individual robots. You can buy just these. This one is not. So for these two, we are going to have an accurate price and accessories and all of that. But for this one, we don't have a price for the individual core robot just because they never sold it like that. So I kind of have to make up a price when we get to the cost factor. And also for accessories, I'm going to have to assume some things if they were to have sold this on its own. So this guy is the only one where I'm going to make some assumptions. These two will be pretty much straightforward on their own. With that being said, this guy, they did release as MP60 on its own. It's a different paint scheme. It's for the toy deco. So the only difference is we're going to be looking at the Toon deco instead of the toy deco. But as far as accessories and all of that, price-wise, we'll look at the actual MP60 pricing and accessories. So that being said, let's get started. We'll start off with the accessories. But as I always mention these comparisons, I try to be as objective as possible. Of course, there's subjectivity involved when you're comparing things like this. So if I pick one, you prefer the other, then you win. I really try to make these comparisons to help people decide what direction they want to go with their collection, including buying all of them if they prefer. So with that being said, let's get started, and we're going to start off with the accessories. All right, so here's the accessories they all come with. These two are the actual accessories that came in the box. The KFC came with an additional panel and some other parts, but they're not for the core robot. These are all meant for the trailer, the combined mode. So I'm not going to talk about them here because it's not really for this figure. So here's what you get with these. The only one I've kind of made up is this one, but they all come with a Power Master. They all transform, and they do look good. Different approaches. I think the KFC has the most paint on them, but they all basically perform the same function. And if you're wondering why I didn't mention the standalone one for the MPG, it's because the MP60 doesn't come with this. So that's not included here. These two both come with a smaller size gun. This actually transforms. It combines with the larger one to make the full-size robot guns. But these two come with guns. The KFC does not. So I'm going to count off their matrix, which the other two don't come with. Now, it is Ginrai. Ginrai didn't really have a matrix, so they didn't. That's why probably they didn't include it. But either way, it doesn't come with a matrix for those two. So we'll set all of those aside. And here's what we're left with. Takara is going to take it on accessories because they have these extra blast effects. All right, next we'll talk about the gimmicks on these. And for the Takara and the KFC, they both have the ability to store a driver inside, but MP60 doesn't actually come with that smaller Ginrai figure. That only comes with the MPG. Also, you can't open the door on this one. The KFC actually has the opening door, and you can put the figure inside. And also, it's got the matrix chamber gimmick, which these two don't really have that. So I'm going to give gimmicks over to KFC. They do have a little bit extra here with this figure. All right, next let's talk about the cartoon accuracy and the sculpt. In order to do that, we'll put the G1 image there from Super God Master Force. You can see for yourself. And when it comes to the cartoon accuracy, I think Fans Hobby is kind of out on this category. So it's really between these two. And I was pretty shocked, but the KFC definitely nails the cartoon better than the Takara. I think it has to do with this chest area and the crotch area. Just the overall shape of the figure in that area just doesn't look right. It doesn't look good, in my opinion, but also doesn't look accurate. I think they really nailed it, especially with the paint, the way they did this center section. Although I think it could have been white instead of gray. But as far as shape, overall look, I do think KFC nailed the cartoon look. When it comes to sculpt, they all have the truck back, which is accurate, right? They should have that. But I do think KFC actually has the cleanest, especially in the waist area. Both the Fans Hobby and the Takara have gaps and holes in the waist area. They didn't really figure out how to close that up. KFC definitely has the cleanest look all the way around. There's really no kibble on this at all. So again, I'm going to give Sculpt to KFC. All right, next we'll talk about the paint and build on these figures. And when it comes to the paint, that one's pretty easy. The KFC is pretty much 100% painted. The Fans Hobby, very lightly painted. It's got some tampo details, some silver accents, chrome for the thighs. Obviously the head and the face is painted, but most of the figure is unpainted. And then for the Takara, you do have some paint on this upper diecast piece. A little bit accents yellow here, silver here, black on the legs, and then silver on the legs with blue. But the blue here and on the arms, and then the red on the arms and the head is unpainted. So as far as amount of paint and quality, I think I'm going to give it to KFC. When it comes to build quality, this one's a little tricky. Now, I always have issues with KFC or Keith's products. This one is actually pretty good. I've transformed it several times. I'm not talking about the trailer, just talking about this guy. This guy probably feels the most fragile out of all of them. Just a little bit flimsy, especially in this middle area. And then obviously we know about these smokestack issue that we have on this guy. Some people have broken theirs. I haven't had an issue with mine. And the Fans Hobby one seems to be pretty solid. I haven't had any issues with that one, regardless of the mode. So I think I'm going to give an edge to Fans Hobby on the build quality. It just seems to stand up to the test of time, and overall, it does feel like the best quality plastic. So I'm going to give it to Fans Hobby. All right, next we'll talk with articulation on these guys. In order to do that, we'll articulate each one individually so you can see how they work. For the Takara, the head is on a rotating swivel, goes back to there, forward to there, and rotates around, no side to side. Butterfly joint on the shoulder. Shoulders can lift up to there on two joints. There's a ratcheted joint in the elbow, or in the shoulder. You have a rotation of the bicep. Single jointed elbow, but it does get to the full bend. You have a rotation at the wrist, up and down movement at the wrist. No individual fingers, they're just on a pin. Coming to the waist, you have a waist rotation. You have an ab crunch up here, although I don't know if that's intentional. But there is a ratcheted ab crunch down here that gets you down to there. And you can kind of combine it with the upper one. I don't know if I want to count that as a double jointed ab crunch or not. I guess it is. Yeah, I guess I'll give it to them. For the legs, the hip skirts will move out of the way. Legs will come down on a drop down joint. And we'll get up to there. Back to there. Up to the side on a soft ratchet. Rotation at the thigh around a cut joint. Not the best. I don't love the way they did with the cut joint. Double jointed knee, you do have to unlock this top part, but you do get the full bend out of that knee. That's pretty nicely done. You have ankle tilts, gets you out to there, and then you have a forward and backward this way. All right, coming over, and one thing I didn't mention when I started this comparison is the Takara and the KFC both have a very wide detents on the first detent on the leg. So that's the first detent for the Takara, which to me that's too wide. And let's move over to the KFC. Same thing here. This first detent is there. And again, I feel like that's a little too wide. So that's why I have them all in a straight stance for this comparison. But let's go over the KFC. The head is on a ball joint, so you get forward and backward, side to side, and a rotation. The ears also can rotate on this one. Shoulders can rotate around on a ratchet, out to the side on a ratchet. You have double jointed elbow, gets you the full bend. Does break up the sculpt a little bit, but you do get it. Rotation at the wrist, in and out movement at the wrist. Individually articulated fingers at 1, 2 joints, and then the thumb is on a ball joint and 2 pins. So definitely the most articulated hands of the set. Coming down the waist, you have a waist rotation on a ratchet. Ab crunch. Not the best way to do an ab crunch because it's just on a friction hinge, but it does work. Hip skirts, front and back and sides. You can get the leg up to there. This knee pad is die cast, so you just want to be careful with that because it can collide with the paint and rub off the paint. Back to there. Out to the side on a ratchet. I was happy when I found out this was out to the side was a ratchet because a lot of times for heavier figures, this is a lot of die cast down here. They forget to do that, and this time they did, so that's good. For the knee, you have a double jointed knee. There's a cutout back here, gives you the full bend, and you have a little knee pad, which I think I forgot to show in my review, but there is a little knee pad there. Coming down to the feet, you have ankle tilts out to there. You have forward and backward, a little bit of forward and backward, not a lot, but then you have a toe tilt, so you can get a walking pose out of that toe. All right, and coming to, let's just get him back to normal. Taking a look at the fans hobby. The head is on a ball joint, forward and backward, side to side, and it rotates around. We have a ratcheted shoulder, goes all the way around, out to the side on friction hinge, but it gets you all the way up to there. You have rotation here at the bicep and a cut joint, double jointed elbow, full bend. Rotation at the wrist. You do have a single pointer finger is separate, but these aren't articulated fingers, so I'm not going to count that for them. We have a rotation at the waist. Ab crunch. It is on a ratchet, but it gets a little wonky. It does work. It's a double jointed ab crunch, but it just gets a little wonky. Hip skirts. One of the worst hip skirt designs ever on this guy, but we can get it up to there. Back to there, out to the side, all on ratchets. Rotation of the thigh on a universal. Single jointed knee gets you 90 degrees. You have ankle tilts, and you have tilt forward and backward, and you have a little ankle cover here. So kind of obvious, but the KFC is going to take it on articulation. They just have more double joints, better hands. Overall, they've got way more going on, so we're going to give articulation over to KFC. All right, next we'll talk about the transformation and engineering on these. And when it comes to transformation, surprisingly, I actually don't enjoy the Takara transformation, specifically the arms, getting them out of the cavity here. The clearance just isn't great, and you're always worried about that because there's a painted panel back here. And it just causes concern. Also, because people broke these clips on the smokestacks, it does warrant caution. When it comes to the KFCs, shockingly, usually KFC is at the bottom of the barrel with their transformation, but this one's actually pretty good. I just transformed all 3 of these, by the way, and not bad at all. The fan hobby is definitely the easiest of the 3. I would say probably the most fun too, just because it's pretty straightforward. So even though I'd say the KFC is pretty good, I'm going to give it to fan hobby. I think the transfer is just more fun and more intuitive. When it comes to the engineering, though, I'm going to definitely give it to KFC because of the cleanliness and the way they were able to create such a convincing truck mode, very accurate and convincing truck mode, but also a very good looking robot mode. I think they really had a good design here. So I'm going to give engineering over to KF. All right, and there they are in their alt modes. And I did decide to leave the Power Master in there just so you could see how they looked. They all have that gimmick. And like I mentioned earlier, the KFC and the Takara, you can put the Power Master inside. The KFC does have the opening door where you can actually seat it inside, whereas the Takara actually open the whole thing. But they both have that. The Fans Hobby doesn't have that. Let's take out the Target Masters. The KFC one actually has an eject button that makes it come out. And there's the Fans Hobby. You can eject this piece here. And they all have a pretty nice looking front, to be honest. The KFC and Fans Hobby have a chrome bumper. The Takara and Fans Hobby have a chrome grille, whereas the KFC went with gray paint for the grille. They all have kind of silverish or whitish lights. Coming to the side, Takara went with silver paint, and Fans Hobby did too, whereas KFC went with the gray paint. Fans Hobby and KFC both have rubber tires. The Takara has plastic tires. I do think the KFC has the best looking truck mode overall. Just as far as, a realistic truck. The Fans Hobby does look good, but it's not very realistic. It's very stubby too. It's kind of short on the back. And then the Takara is a good looking truck, but it's not very realistic at all. I mean, it's got this here. It's not straight. It doesn't have rubber tires. It just looks like a toy. It doesn't look like a realistic thing. So I think I'm going to give it to X Transbots or KFC. I think they have the most realistic and the most impressive looking vehicle, considering that it transforms into the robot. I think they did a pretty good job there. So we'll give alt mode over to KFC. All right, next let's talk about the cost on these guys. And as always, I use the prices off of ages 3 and up since they don't monkey with it after they post it. And MP60 comes in at $160. The KFC Raijin comes in at $150. And the Power Baser, which isn't listed on its own, but in the fully combined mode, it comes in at $210. So I'm going to just factor in a guess that this guy is probably half the cost of the total figure, which will put it at $105. So Fans Hobby is going to win on cost. That actually makes sense because the combined modes, this one is $290, this one is $350, and this one is $210. So either way, we're going to give cost over to Fans Hobby. All right, and the final factor in this comparison is the Members' Choice category. We asked members which one they prefer just based on their own personal preference and no other factors. And this one I did expect. The KFC is going to win the Members' Choice category. I do think it looks the best, but very close was the MPG. This guy didn't get any votes or very few votes, so pretty clear winner here is going to be KFC. So final thoughts on the comparison. You can see the score. KFC is going to dominate in this competition. And that's really funny because he doesn't even have any weapons and he still won. But yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. The KFC, this bot is done very, very well, which is ironic because the trailer is not done well. But they really did a good job on this, and I'm pretty impressed. I almost got one just for myself, for my display, but without the trailer working, it just kind of stopped me from getting it. But if you were to get this as a standalone version of Ginrai, I think you'd be pretty happy. I think the Fans Hobby works better as a combined robot. Doesn't really do it in the core robot mode. And same for the MPG. It's pretty lacking in a lot of things, but the combined mode is a different story. So we are going to do another video for the combined mode, so stay tuned for that. But this one's pretty definitive, and in my mind, KFC definitely going to be the best one here. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.